think it's safe enough to start. First of all, thank you very much. You spent your lunchtime with me. Lunch is a hard competitor those days, and that you were attracted by those buzzwords here. Who am I? I'm Tonio Zemp. I'm a former member of the former management board of the company called Liip. And I learned to start a presentation entertaining, to catch up attention, but due to some structuring, I have to start boring. Sorry about that. So first we learn a little bit about Liip, so you get the context. Liip is a web agency, and we are just operating in Switzerland in 5 locations. We do, meanwhile, the full service package with design, UX, consulting, development, maintenance, but our roots are clearly in development, namely PHP development. And meanwhile, we are a team of 160 Liipers. Amongst them are 2 Drupal teams. So Drupal is not our core business. Our core business is mostly Symfony-related frameworks. And, but we are, since 2009, a member of the community. I checked on Drupal.org yesterday. We have 23 issues fixed in the past 3 months. And Drupal is becoming a more and more important framework for us, since Drupal 8 is now also linked with Symfony. I myself, I'm meanwhile a product owner in one of those Drupal teams. It's also why I'm on this stage. One of our latest Drupal projects we released was this highly complex commerce-based store for Freitag. Freitag is a bag manufacturer. They make bag out of drop targs, which makes every bag they sell unique, which makes caching a nightmare. And this was a 7-figure project, and we are pretty proud of it. But we released like 6 to 7 Drupal projects per year, I'd say. So why I'm here today? Liip tries to be a self-organized system, and we take that pretty seriously. So this is the opportunity to not just read theory about it, but also to hear about it in practice. There's lately a lot of attention around this topic, and I get asked by a lot of partners and friends, yes, can I come visit the office and see how self-organization works? And then I have to say, yeah, you will see people sitting at a computer and having meetings and doing workshops, so visually it's nothing else. Yeah, but there must be no boss office or something, and yes, if you have a company from the current century, you also have no boss office. So visually, self-organization doesn't tell anything. So actually talk about it and talk together about it is a good thing to do. I was at DrupalCon Barcelona a year ago. This was the moment where we were not yet self-organized. So did anyone of here in the room saw that? Wonderful. 1 person, 2, 3, great. So it might be wise to just give you a little summary about what I talked a year ago. So also a year ago, we were not a hierarchic organization. We were something like a team organization. And we also had guilds. It was Spotify-ish organized. We had something that was not really team organized. We had some Liipers with superpowers. These are these yellow or orange fields here. Superpowers because of you still had some exceptions. Team could hire another team members, but firing was such an exception, and this was done by people with superpowers or handling exceptions. And these people with superpowers were also forming the management board of the company. There were no other hierarchic layers, so no team leaders or something like that. It was just these 6 people, and we were like around 130 people a year ago. And in May last year, before DrupalCon Barcelona, something interesting happened. We were in our weekly management board meeting, and we decided, let's drop that meeting. It's just too boring. We do not have anything valuable to discuss because most of the things are now decided by the teams. let's drop it. So we dropped it, and that went pretty well for weeks, but it kind of made us thinking, what is happening here? Why does the company work without a management board that does coordination amongst each other? Maybe everybody or one of those managers, don't know, makes everything by their own, no idea. So we started to investigate what is happening here, what is happening with our company. And amongst our investigation, we crossed that book. It's a Reinventing Organization from Frédéric Laloux. If you're not into book reading, I put the YouTube link here for you. So it's a 2 hours video which kind of gives you the whole idea. And we discovered in this book this term Teal organization. Who in the room is familiar with Teal organization, that term? Yeah, like 20%. I think I should dig a little bit deeper. I also did that a year ago, because back then we already knew that. So Frédéric Laloux analyzed organizational structures, and he made an interesting discovery. He made a discovery then whenever mankind made an evolutionary step, like from living in the cave to plant seeds to hunt animals to whatever, organization also made an evolutionary step. And he started to compare these mankind evolutions and organizational evolutions. And he gave them organizational evolutions a color. So I zoomed that a little bit in. For example, a very early form of organization was, in his world, this red organization, which is organization purely by power. I'm stronger than you, I beat you up, so I'm your boss. And at some point in time I will get old and another one will beat me and he's then my boss. Funnily, we still have this form of organization in the world. Think of a street gang or something like that, it's still existing. Then the next evolution was this amber thing. This is a very strict hierarchically organization you saw in military or in a church, in the Catholic Church. And this was the first form where not just physical power was dominating organizations, but also other things. Then the next evolutionary step was around industrialization, this orange organization, which a lot of companies are still based on. It's about competition, about shareholder value maximization. Basically, in an orange organization, you look at the organization like it would be a machine. You see something does not working okay, so you make a plan how to make it okay, and you engineer the organization. It's how I learned it in university, what business management is. Then the next evolutionary step, also a lot of organizations, especially in our industry, are in this form. It's the green organization. It's more about stakeholder balance or a culture of a strategy, empowerment of people. It's not the pure shareholder value that's in the center, and you listen more to people. But in his research, and he watched a lot of companies, he found also some weird other form of organization. He called it Teal organization, where there was no hierarchy, there were no bosses, people were motivated by other terms. It was not just like small companies, also large organization. This Boots org organization he has as example here is 8,000 people, and they were organized completely different. And it's a Teal, in his world, a Teal organization. And he says, or his hypothesis is, this might be the next step of organizational forms. With all the robots coming and digitalization, it could head in this direction. And this hit us quite heavily, this wholeness, self-management, and evolutionary purpose. Because we had the feeling we are quite there and we ever wanted to be that. So let's do this. And I also talked about why we started to do this a year ago. And if you ask around in our company, why should we be a Teal organization? Some said, yeah, because it's just cool being a teal organization, or that's the future, or what I said before, that's how we always wanted to be. Some also said, yes, no boss, that's awesome. And the bosses said, yeah, no painful decisions anymore, that's awesome. So we started off in saying, yes, we want to be teal. And the good thing was we are very close to that. But there is also a theory why could it be a good idea to head in this direction. This theory says it could improve efficiency in our nowadays structures. You might work at like an insurance company or work with an insurance company, and you see like classical structures, it's kind of losing efficiency when decisions have to go up and down, and you are not empowered to do things. So efficiency could potentially raise, and if something is more efficient, it in reality often also wins. Stability is also a big factor because you do not have a single point of failure and decisions are distributed among a lot of people. It's also a good thing. And in a teal organization, there is also the satisfaction of the employee or of the individual that's within this organization that's potentially higher. But the big question was, okay, how are we going to do that? Let's see, we want to have this wholeness, this self-management, and this evolutionary purpose. Wholeness, we already did a lot for that, so you can fit your job perfectly in your life, and wholeness is achieved. I think that's something you cannot say, okay, now we do it. It's something that evolves step by step. We have since years paternity leaves for fathers and different stuff. Evolutionary purpose is something very hard to catch. I mean, we are not some organization that helps animals in Africa to survive or whatever. We do projects for clients. So to have there an evolutionary purpose, yeah, let's see how that evolves. But what's clearly the topic here is self-organization, because we still have these guys with superpowers. So we are not a 100% self-organization. So we thought, let's start with that. We have to get rid of those yellow things, and we have to get in a self-organization. So it's not teams anymore, it's individuals that interact with each other. And how to get self-organized, a big question. Common sense-wise, there are two ways. We could slightly improve our current organization as it is now. There you have big question, who improves it and how is it going? Or we could switch to a known standard. And we looked at different standards, and this term holacracy was one of the standards we evaluated. So we had this question, and that was the point where my talk in Barcelona ended. Seemed to be a good cliffhanger because I was invited again this year. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Let me check. Yeah. So what happened after that DrupalCon in Barcelona? We had to make this decision. And how we did that is we sent 10% of our company to a holacracy training from different locations, not all the management, just 3 of the management, and developers and designers and scrum masters. So we get some knowledge of that holacracy world into us. Because we saw there are other forms of standard tools, but they are not as evolved as holacracy is or was at that moment. This resulted in a bit of a weird phase where we saw, okay, it's like equal pros and cons if we compare it to just do it ourselves. I think it's like this software thing. Do you want to do it customized, or do you take a standard tool? But we said this holacracy stuff, it seems safe enough to try. So let's do that. We can always switch back to our slightly chaotic form of organization we had before. And this process took us roughly 3 months. And in January, 1st of January 2016, we said, okay, now there is no management anymore. Holacracy is in place. Let's start. Who is familiar with holacracy? That's also not much, so I should also make some side notes about holacracy. So first of all, where to put that holacracy thing? I usually try to explain it with this comparison example. Possibly all of you know the Agile Manifesto. You know that Agile development is a part of an Agile Manifesto, and Scrum is actual framework to perform Agile development. There are other frameworks, but Scrum is one of them. Same goes for holacracy. If you say, okay, there is a Teal organization, self-organization is a part of Teal organization, holacracy is an actual framework how you can be self-organized, but there are lots of other frameworks to do that. Where is it from? The inventor of holacracy was Brian J. Robertson, a former developer, and he developed that framework during the time he was CEO of a rapidly growing software company. He wrote a book about it. I also put you a YouTube link there of a TED Talk he held about his book. And how does it work, this holacracy? So going back to this self-organization, we have a lot of individuals that are supposed to organize themselves. The big question is, how do they interact with each other? How do they cooperate? And that's the main question holacracy tries to answer. So what holacracy says is every individual has every right to do whatever it's needed to create value or to be here in general, but there is some rule set, and this rule set is a structure of roles. The picture you see above, you will see later in that talk, these are roles. And now you say, okay, roles, that's something I know from hierarchies, there are also roles. But there is a big difference. In a classical hierarchy, you have an individual, you have a role, that's a one-to-one match. In holacracy, the first difference is the individual can hold any role on any layer of this role structure. So you can be in a very top role position or a very low. Generally, you have not reporting stuff between roles. But the other big difference is every individual has an influence on this structure. Every individual can change the role structure, and that's also meant to be this way. So if you see that something has to be done, you first do it. If you do it on a regular basis, you put it into that role structure so others see how or who is responsible and how is it done. This is the big trick of holacracy. So all these rules and processes, how this role structure is built and how to interact with it, are written in a book. It's like the FIFA regulations of football. This is a picture of the book. It's called the Constitution. If you want to learn more about holacracy, I do not recommend to read the Constitution. It would actually be the same if you want to learn something about football and read the FIFA regulations. It doesn't make sense. But when you practice it, you start, if it gets in the details, you need that book sometime. So I was talking about roles. Explain a little bit more that you can catch what a role is. Each role needs to have a purpose and accountabilities, what this role is accountable for. And roles that do a lot of work together, they can also be grouped into circles. Roles can assign actions and projects to each other. And this is the tactical level of holacracy. Tactical, that's a holacracy word. But roles can also raise tension if they sense some problems and provide proposal to change the structure. That's the governance level of holacracy. So you distinguish between tactical and governance. And strict tactical and governance meeting protocols enable individuals to change in governance and tactical level things. Yeah, that's a very brief thing. I will later on show something about our holacracy, then you might get a bit deeper. If you want to understand more, feel free to ask me also after the session. So now we said, okay, it's 1st of January, we do Holacracy, but yeah, in the first moment nothing happens, so you somehow need to take off. And as said, 10% were already educated, and some joined also an advanced training in Holacracy. And we decided to, since our current structure was a little bit hard to capture, to just lay out a green field and say, okay, now it's Holacracy, you are individuals, you can create roles, go ahead. And we decided to do that this way because, yeah, what can you do? I mean, there is no bosses anymore, there is no management anymore, so just the question who is implementing Holacracy is very difficult. But the thing is, that didn't work out. So we landed hard again on the ground a couple of weeks later because nothing happened. So we made that, we called a consultant and had a workshop, something we don't like to do usually. But that helped big time, because what we did together with this consultant is copy the current structure in a Holacracy structure. That's something that is just done once, but it makes perfectly sense, because if you do not have a role, you cannot raise tensions and you cannot take influence on the structure. So first of all, peoples need to have roles. And if you have a green field, there are no roles. So it makes sense, first copy your structure. And it was not a perfect copy because nobody knew exactly what our structure is, but at least it was something. And this helped big time because, and it changed also quite fast. Weeks per weeks, the structure began to change. What we also did is a lot of internal trainings, not just the external trainings. And somebody proposed a Holacracy implementation circle, so a group of roles around Holacracy with the goal or with the purpose to implement Holacracy in our company. So that's how we took off. Some things went well, some things not, but meanwhile I'd like to show you some of our holarchy. That's how your structure look with Holacracy, it's a holarchy. How it looks today. You now see a screenshot out of a tool, it's called HolaSpirit. You can, like you use Jira or Redline to manage projects, it's a tool to manage your organization with Holacracy. There's also a more well-known tool, it's Glassfrog. It's a tool of Brian Robertson himself, but this one is open source, which is the reason we prefer it anyway. And what you see here is the most top circle. It's the so-called general company circle. Every company doing Holacracy has a general company circle, so the most top layer of the role structure. And the green dots are actual roles, the white dots are actual circles. In the view of the general company circle, it's all the same. Also, circles have purpose and accountabilities. And here, for example, is this Holacracy implementation circle I was already talking about. It's something on this general level. A role on this general level is, for example, the agile coach. So a role a lot of people, mostly former Scrum Master, also have amongst their roles to do agile coaching internally, externally. Yeah, maybe if I didn't say that yet, we use Holacracy to organize the company. To organize project, we are still using Scrum because it's actually organizing a project and a company is not the same. It's a different story, and that works out pretty well. If there is also a circle called Liip Zurich. It's still something from our old world, which is maybe not too bad. Since we have 5 offices, these offices are quite independent. So it also came to the point that offices have their own circles. If we go into that Liip Zurich circle, we again see some roles and some sub-circles. And here we could have a closer look at 2 different roles, a communication supporter or a hiring coordinator. This is the detailed view on that roles. So in the communication supporter, you see has a purpose, has some accountabilities, so everybody knows what this role is accountable for. Very important to know, this stuff can also be done by anyone else that wants to do this stuff, but if it has to be done, this role is accountable for. Another example is the hiring coordinator, and you see here just an empty space, and such stuff happens often because I think this role was created, I do not know it exactly, but it's a perfect example. Somebody tried to hire someone else, and it was a huge mess because it was not clear which CV is where. So he said, my intention is I cannot work as hiring something because it's a mess. My proposal is we create a role, hiring coordinator, with that purpose, and then my tension is solved. So that's how such a role can come up. And everybody is open if it sees this role is not doing very precise stuff to add accountabilities or to delete that role if it's not necessary anymore. Going back to this Zurich circle, we have this Bazinga circle, where we also could have a look at. It's the actual Drupal delivery circle in Zurich. We have two Drupal teams, one in Zurich, one in Fribourg. And these are circles, they came from former teams. And if we look at that delivery circle, we have also roles. Here is a Drupal developer, for example, but we also have financial health guardian of that circle. Since you do projects, it's good to have a view on financials. And I would like to talk first a bit about the achievements we got through implementing self-organization and holacracy. First, what I can say, it basically works. We do it now for 9 months. We are still existing. We had better numbers in the past, but our numbers at the moment are not bad. There was just one person of one of these 160 that left the company and named as one of the reasons holacracy, so which is also not bad. I personally expected more to leave the company. What I already talked about, Scrum for projects, holacracy for organization, works very well side by side. What for us was a completely new thing is having a transparent role structure. You actually know who is accountable for what, or which role is accountable for what. Because before, if you want to hire somebody, there was no way to look up somewhere who is responsible for that. You just had to ask, okay, this guy has experience, let's talk with him. So this is a huge step forward in speed when it comes to clarify stuff. Then what also is an achievement, nasty stuff gets tackled also by others than former managers. We were this exception group that had to deal with the nasty stuff. And it's not too much, but I see examples of people coming that also say, okay, I have the ability and the tools to care about that, I care about that. Also the responsibility increase. Luckily, we are a company with lots of responsible persons, but you always have a group of people that waits on commands of someone else. And there were people that, with this holacracy, started to take on responsibility for their stuff, which is great. Because holacracy, through the strict processes, it really saves the space. So if you make a proposal, others can object against this proposal, but to have a valid objection, it's very hard. You need to have this, you need to have a role that is affected by the proposal. If you don't have a role, you are not allowed to make an objection, for example. Or you need to prove that it harms the company before you have a valid objection. So that gives space and certainty that it's okay to improve something and to take responsibility for something. A thing I was very feared of is the agility. The big advantage of our former system of having no structure, or basically no structure, was we were very agile. So if something happened, you change it and nobody has any issues with it. And holacracy, on the first glance, it looks like, oh my God, this is what I showed you before. This is a very complex and hierarchic thing. But since it follows reality and everybody can influence it, it's funnily pretty accurate what's happening here. And I was surprised about that. And there is another topic I didn't talk about before. It's domains and policies. Roles can also have domains, and domains can have policies. It's a concept, I would say, a bit from the old world, but it's also part of the holacracy. So if you say there is a thing which by default everybody can change, but it's not good if somebody changed that, and my role is accountable for that, you can say this is a domain. So it's going to be my property, and with policies I can grant access to it or not. Classical example is website, so you have the role website manager, but everybody is allowed to do everything, so everybody can put stuff on the website as they want. And then you say, okay, this is messing up the design, they have no clue what they do, so I do a domain around the website, and the policy is either you are experienced guy with websites, or you ask me first if you want to do something with the website. And for us, since we never had such stuff before, it's kind of a good feeling to not have too many domains and policies. But even with policies, we gain some achievements. There is a domain that's kind of a standard domain that applies to all the roles. And in April, a policy was created. We just have 7 policies so far. But this is a spending money policy because it was somehow unclear how to spend money. Before, there were these exceptions guys. They could say, yeah, you better do not spend that money, that company money. But today, there are no exceptions guys anymore. So we had to kind of say, okay, or like somebody had to say how to spend money. Somebody had to bring a proposal, and the proposal had to survive objections to get that through. What the policy basically says is everybody can spend all the money he wants of the company. There are just some basic rules, like quality is more important than costs, or fed right and organic is more important than costs. There is no kind of process, sign-off, anything. So everybody can buy themselves a Tesla if they want with company money. And the funny thing is, since April, nobody bought a Tesla, first of all. And second, the decisions to spend money are way more economical than before. Because you are now responsible if you spend company money. So this was also a great achievement in my point of view. But let's look at the challenging sides of trying to be a self-organization. One of the bigger challenges is change management. You now think, yeah, obviously, but for us, we never worked this way. We had a lot of changes in the organizations, but we usually realized that the changes are here after they happened. So some office did something else in organization, other copied that, and suddenly you realize, whoa, okay, we have a new form of organization. So basically change management is done. You don't have to care about it. This is the first time where we say, okay, we are in A and there is B and we want to go there. And there was a lot of stuff we kind of missed, like having everybody on board, educating people, really thinking theoretically, what will happen if we do that? For us, it's new. That's why it was or still is a challenge for us. Another challenge, even holacracy is well documented, and meanwhile, lots of companies doing it, and we have great exchange. It still leaves a big room for interpretation. This challenge got a little bit down, but in the beginning, it's very hard. One says, yeah, according to the constitution, this and this is okay. And the other says, no, according to the constitution, this and this is totally not okay. Yeah, what are you doing now? So ask consultants, but that costs money. But this was also, or still is, a challenge. Another challenge is the cultural change. Brian Robertson says, culture follows organization. So when you change the organization, it will also change the culture. And when I heard that, I thought, yeah, no way, because our organization is basically the culture, and yeah, that's not going to happen. But what I feel now, it is going to happen, because as an example, we were a very consensus-driven company. So if there was a big decision, you get everybody affected in a room and you discussed as long as nobody then could say no. With a self-organization, it's the individual that decides, not the team. It's the role that every decision has to have a role behind it that made that decision. You still can go and search for consensus, but in the end, it's you or it's the role that made the decision. And that change or is changing our culture a bit. And another big topic, it's rising up the past month. We came from this team to the circle structure. And a team is a group of people that work together, but it's also a group of people that share social activities. They go to lunch together, they do barbecue in the evening. And a circle is not the same like a team. A circle is a bunch of roles, not a bunch of individuals. And the individuals having that roles in that circle, they also have roles in other circles. And still, as I presented you the Circle Basinga, the Drupal delivery team, this transition of being a team of individuals to being a team of roles raises many questions. Like if you look at your financial, before we just measured the performance of the individuals, which today's makes no sense, because as an individual you do not just add value to your circle or to that circle, you also have assignments in other roles and other circles. And also the social thing, if you're a team always together, it's socially very good, because if you join a company and you join a team, that's your home base. There we kind of need to find other solutions than the team. Another thing is also the economical understanding of the individual. Since the individual is doing all the decisions, a lot of decisions need to have some economical understanding. And even if you can read books about economics, it's something you need to have experience. And it takes time. What you saw is we were 130 last year, now we are 160. It's quite a growth within 12 months. And this is due to the fact that now everybody can hire somebody. And if a team or a circle has too much work, they say, yeah, obviously, too much work, we need some more people, we hire people. But before, if you were in the business like I am, 7 years in some management position, you know the fact that you have too much work right now is no indication if you should hire someone or not. Because hiring someone takes like 6 to 9 months in Switzerland. Having a good sustainable project takes also 3 to 9 months. So what you actually need to do is develop a gut feeling what's happening in 9 months to decide if you should hire someone or not. So at the moment, there are 1 or 2 guys that are out of work, which is not too good for an agency, but it's luckily not in a way it really harms us. By the way, the Drupal team in Zurich is actually looking for a position, and in my point of view, in a very economical form. So if you want to join us, just ask me after the session. And there is this role and soul separation, which is also difficult. It's not a one-to-one between individual and role. If your role gets offended or deleted or whatever, it shouldn't affect you. It's no big deal. But in our classic world, this is a big deal. If I have a role and I give my whole emotion into that role and it's deleted, what is happening? So this is also something we have to learn. Speaking of roles, for this talk, I tried to catch all the roles I have at the moment, last Tuesday. And as you can see, how Keynote is shrinking that stuff down, it's a lot. It's 15 roles, actually. It's not the black stuff that's roles, that's the circles, it's the not bold things that are roles. And I have to admit it's too much. I was not aware that I have so many roles, to be honest. But when I look at it, lots of them are like very smallish roles. But that's something that helps you separate your individual or your soul from the roles. But I would like to talk about the biggest challenge. And this challenge I realized lately. Never talked about this challenge on stage. It's the first time. So maybe I'm totally wrong with this thinking. But it's something, it really hit me like a month ago. It's responsibility for rough decisions. Some of you say, yeah, that's totally obvious that this is a challenge. Others say, what is this guy talking about? I try to give you an example what I actually mean. A drastic example, a very rough decision I had to do in the past. My roughest decisions I had to do was always firing people. I hate that, it's very hard, so it's very rough. So if you look at the classical hierarchy, who fires what? So it's the layer above that fires the layer below. Pretty easy, that's how we know the world. In a team, it's already a little bit complicated. The responsibility is on the team, so the team fires a team member. We had this workaround of the superpower guys to kind of not, have that very directly. But now the question, in a self-organization where the power is on the individual, who fires the individual? And I thought about that. And if you go there in naked theory, it's the individual that fires itself. So I fire myself. There is no other entity that has any responsibility over me. I fire myself. And then I started thinking, okay, whoa, this is kind of weird because this leads to a very interesting question. What do I actually need to come to the conclusion it would be good to fire myself and then actually do it? And if you can get over this question and find solutions for that, you also can tackle the rough decision issue. And I tried to start thinking about that. Obviously, you need self-esteem. So yes, I can fire myself, no big deal. I can go out there and catch a new job, no problem. But you also need a culture in the company that is fail acceptance culture. It's not too bad in our company, but it can be better. We are a Swiss company. Swiss people hate failures. So, but it needs to be no big deal if you say, I drop out of the company, and the other says, yeah, guy, cool, this guy really thought ahead and knows that at the moment he's not fitting into the system, but he can join half a year later. Yeah. And the third one, the thing that's maybe easier to do, but also very hard, you need kind of a painful economical and social transparency about your own doing in the company. You need to have the information, okay, I'm here since 9 months and I didn't add any value to this organization, or the social transparency, I have so many people that hate me, and based on this information, with self-esteem and fail acceptance culture, I think that would be the point where you are then okay to fire yourself. What was weird for me, I always saw another spirit behind self-organization. It's good for the human, it's very satisfying to work there, but this is kind of a very cold and capitalistic way of looking at the self-organization. It boils really down to the individual that has to do these drastic decisions, these rough decisions. I'm pretty sure, I was talking about hiring before, we will find a way around it so that not the individual really has to fire himself. There are workarounds like having processes for that and whatever. But for me, that was really a point noting to share. That's a slide I wanted to skip, but I can go into that. In June we made, because of the time, but in June we made a survey in the company about holacracy, if we should continue or not. And 64% said continue, 26 don't know, 10 drop it. And yes, these are the next actions. It's basically the challenge, as I said. That's why I wanted to skip that. Yeah, but I want to share a final thought with you. I was some minutes ago a little bit critic about this thing. I don't want you to leave the room with the wrong impression, because for me, self-organization really is the thing of the future. And why do I think that? When you think of the future human skill set, like past human skill set was if you were good in hunting, you were good off having a job because you could bring food. The today's skill set is reading and writing. You basically need that everywhere. So what is actually the future skill set if you think ahead? Obviously, one of the skill set is coding, because with code you can generate more value than just with read and write. And I know a lot of you are well off regarding this future skill set. But I think another future skill set is also to live and organize without the boss. Because my prediction is, if in the future something is commandable by a boss to someone else, it's most likely also a robot around that follows it. Most likely a software robot, not a hardware robot, but like having the calendar prepared. My friends working at the big bank, they have an assistant, they manage the calendar. I do not see the point in having an assistant to manage the calendar, because it's faster to just do it yourself than ring the assistant up. Because meanwhile, there is a good calendar robot, Google Calendar. So I think more and more, if you can command something, you will also have a robot. So it's not a skill anymore to just wait on commands. You need to have the skill to organize yourself, to command yourself, to get economical realities, to be creative. And skills needed in a self-organization today are skills that might be needed in your future life. So my recommendation clearly is start today to think about self-organization, or perform it if you have the chance to. Thank you very much. Questions? Yes.
Thanks for the session. I was also attending the Barcelona, and could you give a couple advice of a small company thinking about doing this? 9 people now.
Yes, my opinion about that changed.
Could you repeat the question?
Yes, I can repeat the question. How does this look in a small company? Or is it wise to do holacracy or self-organization in a small company? For self-organization, I can say yes, it is worth to do it. And unless you have a very strong owner or boss, in most small companies, this is also happening, or it's not too hard to do. The hard fact is the guy that founded the company and holds all the power for him to step back. But then you are pretty well off being self-organized, because you get more, you can empower people around you more. What I wouldn't do is apply holacracy to a small organization, because in my point of view, up to 50 people, it's very, at the same place, let's say, it's very easy to kind of catch what everybody else is doing, to find ways to solve problems. It's a lot of common sense. All that stuff we do with hierarchy and blah, 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 I learned that in university. It's really over-engineered shit. With 50 people, when we were 50 people, it's no issue at all having absolutely no hierarchy or structure, in my point of view. After 50 people, it gets hard. And then I think it makes perfectly sense to apply something like holacracy. But self-organization in general, I think even the smallest company, or like think of the smallest company, 3 persons working together, found a company, this is self-organization already. Yes?
Just to pick up on that, I followed the session last year as well. We are a 10-person company, and we applied it. It works very well. I was a bit scared coming to this session. Maybe you would say it went horribly wrong, and then I had a problem too, but everything's good.
Thank you. Yeah, I do not say it's complete insane to do it. It actually helps you a lot. Holacracy gives you structure, which is always good, but it's not necessary to do it to have a self-organization. Let's...
We've been looking into this as well for the last year or so. We have been comparing holacracy to sociocracy, or the latest version of sociocracy. Did you look at that, and how did you compare them, and why did you go this way instead of the other, if you did that?
The company Liip, the question was, did we compare holacracy to sociocracy? We did that, but I was not involved in it, so I sadly cannot tell too much about it. but we did that, and I think the reason why Holacracy was because it's, in our point of view, was better documented, and you could take actual courses. And we have some other companies in Switzerland we know that also started doing it, so you have somebody to share. You had a question?
Yeah, how do I convince my boss to do this? Bring him to the seminar.
I think, yeah, first, a little bit self-study helps. But what convinces most people is go to such a training of Brian Robertson. He is a convincing guy. And the first training section, there he talks a lot about why. Why should we do that? And it was, in fact, also the part where I got convinced about it, because I would be more on the side of developing the stuff myself. That's also what I do in technology. I always try to do it myself. I know it's completely wrong. But in this case, I was also more on the other side. But joining that first training, the thing I got is it is safe. It's safe enough to try. You can try it. It will not hurt the company. And it's also worth trying it, because there is a probability, in my point of view, it was not like 80%, but less, that is really helping our organization to perform. And that's what actually convinced me to try it. And I do not regret this decision. It really, we achieved a lot together with Holacracy. Other questions? Yes, in the back.
Do you start up a new circle? I saw the circle was companies and so on. So if you got a new customer with a lot of work, how do you start up a circle?
The question was, how gets a circle started up? A circle is usually first a role, like sales, the sales role. And the role has issues because the workload is more, or it needs to kind of be a little bit more specific. The income coordinator role gets added and some other roles. And when you see there are some roles that are working very closely with each other, you start to say, okay, let's make this a circle, because then it's easier from the outside view to catch what's going on there. Your example of new client projects, our delivery circles, like these Drupal delivery circles, they have another purpose. It's not just doing one project. The purpose for them is to have a long-term sustainable inflow of projects and delivery of projects. So such a delivery circle does normally 1 to 3 projects in parallel. Clients stick to this circle, and they also do the proposals by themselves. So it's another concept. It's a concept we had before, we just took over. And also there, a new circle usually gets built if somebody has a new idea for a long-term business, and then they start create a role and a new circle around it. Yes?
Is there anything you can tell us about the sort of ownership structure of the company and obviously the
Yes.
sort of tricky sort of profit reinvestment or distribution?
Yeah. The question was if I can tell something about ownership things, and that's a very interesting question, because there are some surroundings you can do that help increase self-organization or make a self-organization easier to do. Profits in the end of the year, we were in the lucky situation that also before we had a very easy model how to deal with that. So if we have profits in the end of the year, everybody gets additional salaries according to their profit. We put something back on our stash for bad times, but usually profits are handed out in form of additional salaries and not for shareholders. Regarding shareholders, if you want to have a share of Liip, you need to have a working contract with Liip. So, and everybody that has a working contract with Liip can buy shares. So the shares are distributed amongst all employees. Obviously, founders of Liip and former managers like I am, we have a bigger portion of that shares. But everybody is open to buy shares and participate at the success of the company. More questions? Yes?
Well, yeah, again, thank you for a great talk. I did not see it in Barcelona. salary thing. I noticed you had the role.
Salary determiner?
Yeah,
Yes.
but that's a very boss-like function. And,
Yep.
and also, I'm guessing it's hard to evaluate what value people create since it's so distributed.
Yep. Now we're going into details, but that's perfectly okay. It's a good example because the thing that we wanted to do first in 1st of January, okay, let's switch old system off, turn new system on, didn't work out as I told. And we have a lot of stuff that's kind of legacy stuff from the past organization. And the past organization regarding salary was every Liipper was assigned to one of those managers, like as senior body or anything. We had talks 4 times a year with those people, and we also determined the salary of our bodies, so to say. Going into Holacracy, it was one of the first system that was then about to change and attacked. And there was a circle formed about, I think it's People Development Circle or something. And they started to figure out new ways how to set salaries for people. And at the moment, we are in some in-between phase. So what they first did is make the salary system completely transparent, so clear points, and most of people know the salary of others. That's already done. And what they, as intermediate solution, had in place, they defined the system, how to set salary, but there are people with experience actually setting the salary. That's why I have this salary determiner role, because I did it in my earlier life. But the goal of this group is clearly to get away from that system and to find another system. But it's not a very easy task you do. But I think I'm pretty positive that within the next 12 months, maybe at Barcelona, at DrupalCon in 1 year, I can talk about the salary system, I hope so. But at the moment, it's kind of an intermediate solution. It's like separated powers. One of the back, yes?
You were mentioning that as a challenge, but what about disagreements? How do you sort this out? Is there an escalation process or something?
Not sure I catched it right. Which agreements do you mean?
Between people or roles? How do you get
Disagreements. It's not something that is... the question was, how do you sort out disagreements between persons? What Holacracy helps is how to sort out disagreements between roles. And this is this meeting process where when you have disagreements, so when you have a valid objection against a proposal, there is also an integration process that defines in different escalation steps how these disagreements get to each other and solved. But you also have the underlying individuals, and also individuals can have a disagreement. This guy is not showering enough or whatever. So this is obviously not solved in Holacracy, but you also need to develop ways or a culture to deal with that disagreements. And luckily, there are not so many disagreements the past 9 months. So I think of examples. Yeah. The thing is, concerning the companies, disagreements concerning the company structure, they're really handled well between roles through Holacracy. And I had to learn a lot, because in these meetings, you have a very tiny spot to speak. Usually you just have to sit there. And for me, that was very special, because I like to speak. And I really had to get used to it. Okay, now it's the time to ask clarifying questions. It's not the time to give an opinion. So just shut up. And I also realized when I'm sitting in a client meeting, I often fell in this Holacracy mode, just sit there and wait until it's your turn. They think, no, oh, I'm in a client meeting, I should give a great show here. So yeah. Yes?
Yeah, I'm still thinking about a question, but if you have a circle,
Yes.
I mean, say the guys doing DevOps, making sure that the clients are posted and maintained the sites up to 25. Most likely those are quite tricky guys. How do you make sure that they have the business sense to decide, okay, let's scrap our home-built solution for this new off-the-shelf system that would probably be better in the long run for our business? See what I mean?
I see what you mean. The thing is, we do not have a DevOps circle, because DevOps is something that has to be done within the delivery circles. But if
But is it okay that all the delivery circuits have their own solution on what platforms to use, what hosting? So you don't end up with like
yeah,
10 different hosting contracts with 10 different suppliers, and that doesn't make sense?
I'd say in most of the cases, it's okay. But we have a role, it's called Platform Gardener. It's also a role on a GCC level, General Company Circle level. And this role was created because mostly the use of internal tools. So we do not have like a wild variety of different internal tools. And this role got the powers to have a final word on decisions what internal tool to use. And I think this role was also created by attention that we have too many internal tools. So it just needs somebody that has attention with that and that brings a proposal. So it's not really some boss or anything that has to do that. So that's a good example how the structure evolves and works itself. More questions? Yes, in the back.
So how do you assign people to these roles, particularly if they're new roles? How can people on that role change? So, someone wants to become the salary determiner, how do they become one, or what's the process around that?
Good question. That's precisely defined in that constitution. And it works like this. Every circle has some mandatory roles that you need to have if you create a circle around roles. One is, for example, a facilitator. That's the guy moderating that meetings, or the secretary. That's the guy tracking the stuff in the tool. And one of that roles is also the so-called lead link. The lead link is the person that gets every new role default assigned. So when the circle creates a new role, the default assignee is the lead link. And the lead link has the accountability to find someone to perform in this role. If he finds no one, he has to do it himself, or try to get rid of the role by, in the next governance meeting, kill it with a good proposal. And the thing is, you as individual, you get approached by different lead links with roles, and you don't have to take them. You can say, no, I don't want to have this role. And in reality, if you see, this is a sales role, I like to do sales, so usually you go then to the lead link that has, of the sales circle, and ask him, I would be interested, do you have a sales role for me? This is actually a thing where we are now starting to collect more data around it, because this assignment works pretty well, but as agency you need to have some control. How many time do you spend for chargeable work and how many time do you not spend for chargeable work? And since we are a self-organization, each individual need to have that information. That's that painful information I was talking about. So each individual needs to know, is it okay to spend time for that role, which is not chargeable or not? And that's a big thing we are, or at least I'm working right now on, how to get this transparency on an individual basis. Okay, so thank you very much. I will be here the whole afternoon and at the party. Don't forget to fill out that's wrong, survey. And tomorrow is some sprint thing. So thank you very much.